Hello everyone, I hope you have wonderful summertime. However, it is time for another Adobe Commerce lesson. In last videos we were covering the deployment process from different angles, and today we are going to see how to optimize the process so that our customers are less affected by the downtime in maintenance mode when we deploy new changes to our application. So there is a dedicated page in the Adobe's documentation that describes a couple of options. Let's take a look. So here on this page, Adobe collected and explained the different aspects of the cloud deployment. So on the first link, cloud deployment process, this is just a page explaining how the deployment process works, but we've already covered that in previous videos. So if you are interested in finding more about it, you can check out my other videos. So we can just get back. There is a zero downtime deployment, which is a next link, and this is a crucial page because it contains information about how to optimize your deployment process. So how to configure your projects to minimize a website downtime. So here on this page, it is important to be aware that the length of time your production site is in the maintenance mode depends on the size of the site, the number of changes applied during the deployment, and the configuration for static content deployment. And as next sentence says, it is possible to configure your project so that it deploys with a zero downtime effect. It means that we can optimize some aspects of the deployment process, but the downtime is affected by size of the website and changes that needs to be applied. Like, for example, if your commit requires some database patches, or you need to upgrade some schema or update some data in your database. So those actions require some additional time. That's why we can try to optimize and minimize the downtime when the maintenance mode is enabled. But because of the way the cloud deployment works, we cannot guarantee that there won't be any downtime. So there is this additional mechanism that helps. So during the deployment process, all connections queue for up to 5 minutes, preserving any active sessions and pending actions, such as adding to cart or checkout. After deployment, the queue is released and connections continue without interruption. Therefore, if we optimize the deployment process, especially the deploy phase when the downtime occurs, in theory, users shouldn't be affected as requests will be automatically resolved. But in practice, if a user notices that the website loads longer than a couple of seconds, it for sure will leave the website. That's why I am inclined to say that this is just a catchphrase, and actually zero downtime deployments are called blue-green deployments, and this is something that you are looking for. So these are not yet officially supported by Adobe, but I've heard that Adobe has been working on it, but I don't know what is the current status of it, and there is nothing official at the moment. Blue-green deployments, on the other hand, this is a strategy where two identical environments are used to release updates by switching user traffic from the current version, the blue environment, to a new version, the green environment, ensuring seamless updates with minimal downtime and a quick rollback option if needed. Alright, let's then get back, and here on the next page we have static content deployment strategies. So we already covered that in previous videos, but if you are interested in finding more, please go to the linked video, and on this page you can just find information about different deployment strategies and also how to enable, for example, the static content deployment on build or on demand, or just skip the static content deployment at all. So everything is described here. Next one is the Smart Wizards page. These are commands from the ECE tools, and they help us to validate if our Adobe Commerce Cloud configuration is correct. And we will see that actually in action. So we have, for example, the wizard ideal state. We will use that one to actually check if the static content deployment and basically the deployment process is optimized. Also, we'll use the wizard SCD on not daemon, but this one, wizard SCD on build. So we'll verify that indeed the static content deployment on build phase is enabled. So we have some other informations like some examples and so on. So if you're interested, you can find more on this page. And the last one is actually the track deployments with New Relic. So this page describes how to configure New Relic to actually show some analytics connected to your deployments. So everything is also described here, but unfortunately this is out of scope of this video. Alright, so we know what we can expect from Adobe's documentation. Let's now check out the page about the zero downtime deployment and let's see actual best, or let's say ideal configurations for our projects. Alright, so the first step is to make sure that you have the latest version of the ECE tools package. So if you go to this page and you simply execute this composer command, you will make sure that you have the most up-to-date Magento ECE tools package. Secondly, we need to change the static content deployment to be executed on the build phase instead of a deploy one. Then configure the post-deploy hook, and so there is this special section in Magento app file when we configure our hooks. But I think most of the projects already have this configuration. It was made like a default configuration, so we just simply need to make sure that it is there. Additionally, we should reduce theme files, so we should configure this SCD matrix environment variable and only configure the themes that are required to be like deployed by the static content deployment. So if you, for example, do not use Magento blank theme, we just don't include it, and therefore it won't be like picked up by the static content deployment command, thus reducing the time of static content deployment, right? And then we can play with the SCD threads environment variable to actually increase the number of threads for static content deployment. I believe that by default we have 4 threads, but this can be quickly checked in the documentation if you are interested. Perfect. We know what we need to do. Let's then get our hands dirty. Let's use the ECE tools to see the wizard that will help us to set up all the necessary configs. Okay, so let's use the vendor bin ECE tools and let's see what wizards we have. So we have exactly the wizards that we've seen in the documentation. The one we are interested in is the ideal state and SCD on build. So let's run the wizard ideal state. Let's see what will be the result. So the configured state is not ideal. We have some first information. No stores website locals found in config PHP. So because on the build phase we do not have the connection to database, because we simply have just the PHP code that is executed on the build phase, so there are no external services connected to this environment. Like the deployment won't know what websites, what stores, locales we have in our configuration. That's why we need to dump our database config into the app etc config PHP. So we can run the bin Magento app config dump, and let's use the help option. So this bin Magento command will basically get the data from database and then put it into app etc config PHP. So we only need the scopes type and themes type. So let's just simply use this command with those options. So we simply configure scopes and themes. Right, let's execute it. Done, config types dumped into scopes themes. So now we can open our PHP Storm project. We can go to the config PHP. We can see there is, except the like all enabled modules, we see that we have some configurations here. So there is a scopes and themes configurations. And now we can already actually switch to our browser and go to the configure static content deployment strategies, and we will see how to configure the static content deployment on build. So we do not need to use SSH connection. We will just simply make the changes in our repository, commit that and send into the repository, and this will also work. So what we need to do, we already move lookers to the file system using the command from the bin Magento. Right now we need to create the Magento env file because this is something that we didn't create it. So let's go and create this file. New file, Magento env. And what we need to do, we need to configure firstly the skip HTML minification into true. So this is just an option that is required to make this ideal and basically static content deployment on build. So how we can configure it? We need to use this code. So we simply just copy that and paste it here. All right, this is there. Right now, let's get back. We need to configure skip static content deployment, and we need to configure it to false. So it means that on the build phase, we skip, and we set this to false, so we actually do not skip the static content deployment. So it means that the static content deployment will happen on the build phase. So also, let's copy that. All right, we just need to configure that. All right, and then we need to set SCD strategy to compact. So there is like a strategy for static content deployment. So there is a standard one, so deploys all static view files for all packages. There's a default one that minimizes the deployment time, but the one that is recommended is to use the compact one, which conserves disk space on the server. So we simply will copy that, we'll paste it into the build part, SCD strategy compact. All right, so this would be actually enough, but let's also configure the SCD matrix. So let's go to the, let's get back to this page, and there is this SCD matrix. So we configure only the required themes by our project. So here is an example. We simply will use this one. So let's imagine that for our example, we do not need any front-end theme. We just simply want to have our backend panel. So we just simply configure this one, and then as a language, we only need the English language. So this will mean that with this configuration, the static content deployment will run only the deployment for Magento backend theme and the language NUS. And as you remember, we can also play with the SCD thread. So this is the one that is meant to configure the number of threads that will be used for the static content deployment. So by default, so this is automatic by default. And let's see, the default value is set based on the detected CPU thread count and doesn't exceed a value of 4. So we can leave it for now as it is by default, but if you want to play with it, you can just simply change this configuration. Let's get back to our shell and let's run the command again. Sorry, not this one. Let's run this wizard ideal state. And we see the configured state is ideal. And we also can use the wizard SCD on build. So let's confirm that everything is set as we want. And we see static content deployment on build is enabled. So this is basically all that we need to do in order to optimize our deployment process. Now let's quit the shell and let's commit our changes. Right, optimize the deployment process and let's push it. And with the magic of the video editing, we can now quickly pass to the most interesting part, so we can actually see when the static content deployment is executed, and we can see that it is happening in the build phase. So here is the DI compilation, which happens in a build phase, and after it there is the static content deployment executed, and it's executed only for the EN/US language. So this is what we configured in this SCD matrix environment variable, and also we can see that Adobe Commerce Cloud used 4 threads to execute it. And this is excellent because it means that the most extensive part of the deployment process was executed outside the maintenance window. All right, and the deployment is finished. So we successfully optimized the deployment process by moving the static content deployment from the deploy phase to build phase. And now we have also some additional options, like for example with the post deploy hook. We didn't check it actually in the project, so we can do it right now. So if we go to Magento app YAM file, we can confirm that indeed the post deploy hook is configured. And with the post deploy hook, we have some additional options. So if we go to this post deploy hook section and we click on this post deploy variables page, we can see that we have this configuration environment variable warm-up pages, so we can customize the list of pages used to preload the cache in the post-deploy stage. So we can, for example, set that after the deployment we want to preload our homepage. Alright, that is all for this lesson. Thank you very much for staying up with me. I hope this was useful and you will actually use it to optimize your projects. So thank you for watching and see you in the next videos.